Hi again, and we're back with the real job. Now, as you can see, we've got the 5 songs laid out here. I've got 10 plug-in slots here, of which I've used 7 of the 10. And some of these plugins are in a bypass state, you can see. Now, I've automated the whole thing, so as I jump from track to track, you'll see some of these bypass states change, depending on which plugins we used for that track. And there's another set, and finally that. Now this is a difficult job because let's assume we've got a hypothetical charity CD here where 5 different artists from different styles have contributed their 5 tracks. So there's no relation between them. We don't always get the luxury of working on a single album where the same engineering team and artist have made the entire album. So in this case, we're going from electronica to kind of a harder rock to hip hop. So it's going to be a difficult job. And don't expect miracles. Mastering is really going to be a 10 or 20% kind of sheen thing at the end of the job. The real work is the arrangement and the mix itself. But we do what we can, and we can certainly make a vast improvement on what was there before. So what I'll do now is jump from track to track and let you hear the finished work, and then we'll go into each track one at a time and show the plugins and processes that have been involved in getting it there. So I'll just play a little, say, 10-second snippet from each one. And you heard how different they sounded before, so here's where we are now.
Is amazing. Your spirit can dance on air. Somebody who'll make things happen while others just stay. That I truly need, and I don't care if I see the money. You know it was worth it all to me.
Yeah, it's 'cause I'm so Brooklyn. Look at how I'm looking. I'm so Brooklyn. I know the haters probably want to see me fall.
So totally different tracks, totally different sounds, but hopefully we've got a balance through there where at least the whole thing can be listened to in one single session without having to adjust volumes on the way. Now, let's break it down track by track, and we'll start with this one and see what we've done there. Now, ideally for each track, I try to identify the problem that I'm going to try and overcome, whether there's too much of something, not enough of something, or something that just needs to be somehow controlled. So in this track, Couldn't This Be, I identified the fact that we needed to give a little bit of a push to the highs and a bit of a push to the lows. So I suppose I was trying to just hi-fi the track up a little bit. So what I've done here is push the lows at 20 Hertz, which did create a little bit of a boom. So what I've done is attenuated that same area as we discussed back in the 18F tutorial. So I kind of got the nice deepness out of this, and then the mud that went along with it got taken away by this. So the clever dual effect of the Pultec approach at work there. And here, just a bit of a sweetening at about 8K. It's not a huge difference, but just enough to pump a little bit of air through. From there, into the linear multiband. Now here on these lower bands, I'm just using those in normal downward compression mode to control those frequencies when they get a little bit up there. But over here in the high mids, I actually use the reverse trick where I've set this range control to a positive number, 6 dB upwards. So in that case, what's happening there is when this threshold is crossed, the processor actually pushes up a little bit. So if you have a look, it's not going to be much, but I'll play a loud section of the song. So you can just see that quivering along a little bit. It's not doing a lot. And even here, just the very, very bottom end. I was having a little bit of sub rumble, so I just tied this bottom guy in to just kick in a little bit. Not doing much work. A lot of mastering is very gentle. There's not huge, massive aggression that you can get away with in mixing when you're doing that sort of thing. Here, it's all going to be very broad strokes and a lot of the time very, very gentle. So it kind of looks like a fairly radical thing I've done here, but it's not working terribly hard. It's not doing much at all. And from here, we go into the L316, and that'll be the common thread in all 5 songs, L316 into the Duro meter, which is just locked there, showing us what's going on. Now, as I said before, I normally would have the Duro on a larger size and moved off to a whole different screen, but for the sake of the tutorial here, I've just used the small one and tucked it into the corner there. So naturally, because this song here is much softer, you'll see here when I click on it, boom, the threshold jumps down to a much higher number because the song needs much more boost in the other end. That leads us on to this second track. So again, I've gone to the Puig Tech first. Now this time I've left the bottom end alone there, and I've just pushed up the very, very highs here, like 12K. And my feeling for this song is that it was a bit congested and it was very, very MIDI, didn't have kind of much sparkle in it at all. So I've thrown that in there just to give a little bit of sparkle to it. And that moved in again to the linear multiband. And here, I've done a little bit of a lift on the very bottom here. So you can see the actual curve goes up there, but at the same time, it's also working on those frequencies. So if I play, so you can see in its most aggressive areas, it's actually level, that orange line there, which is showing the output of the frequency. It actually levels off when the kick and the heavy bass kicks in at that point. So again, it's just a control thing. Let's have another look. So most of these other bands are hardly even working. It's just a very gentle action, and I'll do it now and just bypass it a bit, and you might be able to hear a slight difference. It's probably difficult in these circumstances at your end to hear the changes with any great clarity, but let's have a look. So in, out. So it's subtle, but it is controlling things just a little bit. Now from there, I've gone into the linear EQ low band. Now this was interesting. My other perception about this track, as I said, because it was so MIDI, it didn't have any deep bass. So what I did here using the low band version of the linear phase EQ is kind of that Pultec thing, but with much more precision here, where I've boosted very low, which is this 2.8 dB boost at 65, but using a resonant low shelf. So that allowed me to tuck in this little boomy bit that came up when I pushed that up. So I managed to lift up the very bottom bass, but at the same time, tuck away this boomy area. Now I'll do a before and after on this one alone. So for me, it actually brings out the kick a little bit more, makes it again a little bit more hi-fi for a song that is quite sort of congested and middly. And at the same time here, I've also done a little notch of 140 Hertz, which was a little area where I kind of sensed there was a bit of build up, and so took a little bit down there. Now this one I actually used center on, which is the only track in this collection that I did do that with. And my sense here is that the other tracks seemed a little bit wider. Even though there was a reasonable stereo image on this track, I just thought I could bring it out a little bit more. So what I've done is lift the sides up from here and also distributed some of this punch towards the sides as well from its center position. So it just made the track a little bit more exciting, a little bit wider. So let's have a listen to that. And I'll actually start from a bypass position and then open it up. So there's the bypass. So pretty subtle. I mean, I'm not suggesting that I've made a massive difference here, but all these little 1%ers add up in a before and after situation for mastering. So I'll just try that demonstration one more time in an earlier section and see if it's a bit more apparent. There you go. That was a bit more obvious, I think. Before. Yep, just places some of the instruments a bit wider as well, some of the guitars, which is cool. Alrighty, moving on to this third track. And if I click in there, you can see I've only used the linear multiband and the L316. And let's open up this fella here and see what he's doing.
Thief do. Now the honeys wanna lock me down like police do. Why your face all in my book? Oh, you can read too. Crowd in my
so you can see here, all I'm really doing is grabbing this low mid band. I'll even solo that. Right, so in there.
You're not impressed, but I promise you'll be amazed with the big.
And again, that was just to ease a little bit of congestion. Even as though it's a fairly sparse arrangement, being a hip hop track like that, I still kind of sensed a little bit of tightness down in that low mid area. So just jumped on it with this band here. And that's what's great about a processor such as this one, in that if I did that with an EQ, it would also work, but it would take away that frequency for the entire track. Whereas here, it's only taking away that frequency when that frequency tends to get a little bit out of control. So it's working dynamically. In breakdown sections and whatever, it does nothing. It backs off, gets out of the way. So that makes this much more useful than a standard EQ for this kind of thing, I think. Now the other bands are doing nothing. We can see all their thresholds are up at 0. So it's only that second bottom band there that's doing the work. And from there, it's going straight into the L316 for final limiting and nothing else. So ideally, I've left that one almost flat. Now here, Kenny's track sounded great. If anything, I thought it could do with a little more deep bass as well. It had a nice prominent strong kick, but it wasn't particularly deep. So what I've done is gone into the Pultec here and pushed up the 30 cycles and again attenuated the mud that came up with that. And I'll do it before and after on that just to show. So before, so you can hear the bottom end's a lot thinner. So even through here. So I'll jump into the chorus again. Before. And at the same time, I've also boosted a little bit of 12K just for some sparkle there. So when I was bypassing, I was also obviously bypassing that as well. So again, just a little bit more hi-fi on that. And finally, the Master Mad track. Now, the interesting thing about this track is this little thicker block here, you can see at the front, is kind of the nastier section of the track where there's that very high mid aggressive synth. And as you can see here, it kind of drops off at that point and doesn't return. So I've tailored the track to try and take care of that a bit more, which I suppose arguably could make the rest of this track a bit duller. Now, I could automate that a bit brighter again, but I'm assuming that's Master Mad's artistic intention. So I've deliberately left this part alone and tailored the track using this part here. So let's have a go. Now, I might contradict myself a bit here, but follow my logic. So what I've done is boosted the very deep 20 cycles here again and attenuated with that. Now I've done a little bit of a boost at 4K. Now that's only a little kind of kiss there. So I've done a little bit of a boost at 4K, which might make you think, well, hang on a minute, if this thing's so annoying and buzzy, why are you actually boosting there? But hopefully that will become clear in a second. So I've done the boost there, then we move in to the linear multiband. Now what I'm doing here is something I actually do on a lot of masters that I get, and it's the two problem areas. It's the deep bass and it's the high mids. So what I'm doing is attenuating both, and have a look with it in action. So it seems weird, doesn't it, that the two things I've boosted over here, I've then come into here and I'm trying to control. But there's a reason for that. In terms of bass, I thought the track could have done with a bit more bass, but when I pushed it up, it then became a little bit kind of out of control and thick. So I kind of giveth with one and taketh away with the other one. But as I just said regarding the other track, this is a dynamic EQ, so to speak. So it's only going to push down on that bass when that bass becomes too much. But when that bass retracts, up we go again. So it just helps it pump a bit. Now over here, you can see that the orange line is actually going above the line there. So I'm kind of doing the same thing even more here. I'm actually turning up that frequency there, which is this hardest frequency. I'll solo it for you. So it's where a lot of the nastiness in this track is. I'm actually turning it up, but then I'm bringing that threshold down and making him push down on it. So that way, in this section here where it's not quite as nasty, it's still working. It's pushing down a little bit as well, but it's still working. I mean, it is still a little bit harsh there, but it's a different kind of synth to this one, which is really aggressive. So what I'm doing, let me bypass this and show you the difference, and you can see how it is actually taming some of that hardness, but at the same time, it doesn't dull the track out. So before, I'll do it through this hard section. So it's subtle, but it does tuck the track in a little bit without kind of suppressing it so much that it becomes dull. So again, straight to the L316, and that's the end of that track. Now let's do a little before and after comparison here. As you may have seen along the way, I've got the original tracks up here above the ones I've been working on, and they're completely untouched, except I do have an L2 here, which I use just for this second track because it is so soft. The other ones are below 0, but at least they're comparable to what I've done, whereas this track here is like 15 dB soft. So when I click into this track, you'll see the threshold for this L2 jump down. And there we go, 14.1, so that was just a rough guess. It doesn't have to be too accurate, but that's just so we compare a little bit more apples with apples, because a 15 dB drop is just too much to base a comparison on. So I'll close that off, and I'm going to control the muting and unmuting of the tracks here from a control surface. So that one's muted, as you can see now, and this one's unmuted. And because I've got so many linear phase plugins down here, there's actually a massive latency in this path at the moment, way beyond that even Pro Tools can compensate for. And we can have a quick look at that here. I mean, look at that. 16,000 samples plus. So when I do my A/B comparisons, there's sometimes going to be a little bit of kind of phasey noise as the two of them are playing over each other, because I can't really compensate for that manually. But anyway, we'll get over that. You'll hear what I'm talking about when we do the switching. So I'll start at the beginning again now and play the first track. First of all, the original dry version, and then our mastered version. Back to the original. And the new one. The difference there is quite obvious, bigger and more sort of hi-fi sounding. Okay, second track, starting with the original.
If I see the money, you know it was worth it all to me. When I should be running from you. When I should
Back to the original.
from you, when I should be running from
Swap again.
your icy stare makes me feel so warm.
So an interesting one, that one. It's certainly got a bit more hi-fi-ness now the way I've done it, but it does bring out that open hi-hat that's pounding along through that track. So often mastering is a compromise between improving the overall sound of the track and possibly bringing up something that you don't want to be too prevalent. But that's where we are with that. Next one.
Brooklyn, look at how I'm looking. I'm so Brooklyn. I know
Okay,
the haters
switching.
probably wanna see all off. Honeys wanna jump on, so you need to jump off. Yeah, it's cause I'm so
Back to the original.
Brooklyn. Look at how I'm looking. I'm so Brooklyn. Yeah, you should never bite the hands that feed you. And I don't know who running that feast, but I wanna eat too. I came.
So it's a little more forward, possibly just due to the slight volume difference between these two files, because that track didn't have too much done to it anyway, just that sort of low-mid taming. Now, fourth track, original. Okay, we'll get to the chorus. There we go. Back to the other one. And mastered. Okay, and finally the last track here. Here's the original. And the mastered. I'll go to this other section as well. Original. And mastered. Original. Mastered. So even though on these mixes I am smashing this zero ceiling and it looks like things are working hard, this is not a loud mastering job. A lot of the commercial stuff could be 3 or 4 dB louder than these tracks again. But in the hope of trying to preserve some sanity with our music, I prefer not to hit things quite so hard. So thanks for looking at this tutorial series. I hope you got something out of it, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks very much.